Now, Part C of this bill, we give information, alcohol, substance abuse, oasis, consultation with, we give individuals different information on services that are available and stuff like that, right?
Yes.
Do we give this information to parents or to family members upon request also?
It's not specific. It's not specifically in the bill.
All right. Does it prohibit them from giving it to families information? Do we set up a website or anything?
Well, let me answer the first part of that. It does not prohibit them.
Right. Do we make this information available online?
The bill does not require it being online, but it can be put online, yes.
Now, do we make Oasis or the health department responsible for helping with placements into rehab centers or detox centers?
The bill addresses it. There will be a referral to a provider in the area. That's
Right.
what the bill addresses.
But when we talk about a referral, we can say that you have a rehab near where you live, or do we have a database, or do we instruct Oasis to have a database?
We don't. Oasis has a database of those providers, so that the person would be pointed to the provider in their area that they could go to.
Okay. But do we have, see what I'm trying to get at, and I apologize,
That's okay.
is the problem that I've heard is when a person wants to go into rehab, they'll go in, they'll apply, they'll take all the information, and it'll take them a month because there's no availability. All right? And, I mean, once you have a person ready to go into rehab, and we're waiting a month for them to actually get in, 9 times out of 10 or more, we've lost that person.
Right.
So what I'm wondering is if does this create some type of database that Oasis or the Department of Health has to monitor, where the rehab centers have to call in and let them know the number of beds that are available, the number of patients that they have, and what can we depend on Oasis to turn around and say, okay, yes, we'll assist you in getting a bed? Do we set anything up?
Again, the issue of a database already exists that they're going to refer people to neighboring resources. The issue of what you address about the resources available for people who want to get into treatment immediately, and what you address, Al, is in everybody's district, and I know you've worked very hard on your task force, and you've heard people say this. What we think is that that's part of a funding resource issue that we are hoping that we would get the funding required to provide, that people will be able to get into these treatment centers quicker than they are now.
Yeah. Well, and what I'm looking at is that if a person may be in Suffolk County, there's no open beds, but there may be one in New York City, there may be one in Westchester, that now Oasis assists that person into getting them placement prior to them just going there.
The database will say that.
Will it say that? But what I'm looking for is the state to coordinate this, the state to organize this, the state to help with the referrals, the state to help fill the beds, and vice versa. If somebody's in the city and there's nothing in the city, and I have one on Long Island, you know, that person, I know that this day it's available.
Right.
So we're going to assist you getting into that rehab.
Right. No, that's a good point, but that is not addressed in this bill.
Okay. Now, if the person comes into the hospital, they've overdosed, and brought back by Narcan, You know, I know later on I'm going to talk in the other bill that there's a 72-hour hold.
Right.
And in some cases, like if you have a senior and they're brought into the hospital, they can't release them to the street. Okay, it's against the law. They have to be able to make sure they're going home to a safe environment. And I mean, you wouldn't say that if a person just OD'd and brought back from death, he's a danger to himself. You'd agree with that?
Yes.
Okay. Do we require the hospitals under this to actually make sure that the person goes from the hospital to rehab or to detox?
We do not require that in this bill.
Okay. Last one
Yep.
is we talk about there's an education component to this bill. And we talk about the combat rise. There's also DOH to disseminate data related to opioid overdose and opiate deaths so that counties can better determine how to combat the rise of heroin.
Right.
Do we do anything with the schools? So one of the things that I've heard out there when we talk to everybody was in the elementary schools, we used to have programs, resource officers, the DARE program. And they say in the lower grades, that type of thing is appropriate.
Right.
But then once you get to the middle school, it's important to have peer-to-peer counseling, because by the time they get to middle school, if somebody our age talks to them, it sounds like the parents from Peanuts, Wawa, you know? So, I mean, are we doing anything to fund education and to actually be able to look at these programs and put back the prevention part of it? Because with the Common Core, and we're getting away from Common Core, thank God. Thank you, Kathy. We're getting away from Common Core in a lot of areas. We got a lot more work to do there. But opening up part of the school day so that we can bring this type of education to the schools, because we're falling down there. So we talk about educating, and we're throwing it on the counties. But we need to do something with education. We have to direct the Department of Education that not only should you do this, but you're going to do this.
Right. No,
Do we do anything like that?
Al, those are good points, and I know that many of us in our own districts who have roundtables and talk about this issue, the education piece comes into play. You're right, we have to educate people. I know personally in Staten Island, the local police and the borough president go into the local schools and they talk about it. They talk about treatment. They talk about the heroin and opioid addiction. But this bill does not address the funding that you had talked about that would be needed for this. And this bill does not address the issue of going into the schools.
Okay. Well, my point to this is to show the holes. I mean, it's a first step. And when I said the last bill was a baby step, I think it's like a third of a baby step. This is another third of a baby step. The last one will be another, we'll get one baby step where we need a giant leap. And, I'm hoping that by having this discussion, we can move this forward further. We can make people think, and and I'm hoping that when people listen to the things that we don't have, they're already forming ways of putting legislation in next year to address the issues that we're going to address.
No, and I know that I appreciate it, and the folks on our side of the aisle appreciate it, because all of us are facing the same issues that you have witnessed with your task force. And it is, you're right, these are steps, small steps going forward. And like you said, I believe as we go on, next year and year after, we will be working and building on these pieces of legislation that we put forward here today.
Okay. Thank you very much.